Hey guys, welcome to today's live stream. Today we're going to talk about the differences between Android development versus iOS development and some of the things that I find a little bit frustrating on one platform versus something that's on the other platform that's a little bit easier to handle just in terms of coding and building the project, releasing it onto the Play Store versus the App Store. Some of the little nuances that make it easy and also difficult at the same time. So that's what today's live stream is going to be about. And we have on the screen, hopefully you can see the iOS simulator that is, let me just pull it up here, that is currently listing out some of the key differences between developing on Android Studio versus Xcode. And it's not that it's very difficult or a lot easier on any platform. It basically depends on how much experience you have with Android versus probably Xcode. Sometimes you'll find that Xcode is pretty unstable, and sometimes you'll find that Android Studio is pretty unstable. So it really depends on how comfortable you are with that particular platform. All right, and then on the left side, hopefully you guys can see all of the YouTube guys joining in the channel. All right. So hopefully I posted the Twitter link for the live stream correctly. So every Sunday we have a live stream and we just kind of talk about things related to mobile development. And we're probably going to focus on iOS most of the time. More specifically, probably Swift. And I guess the reason why we're focusing on Swift so much is because the channel is all about Swift for now. And then later on, we'll have a perhaps different channel that focuses on Android development. So lately, there's been a new language that, well, not lately, but Kotlin is a new language that was been released into the Android development environment, which makes development a lot easier. And yeah. Hopefully, I'm thinking maybe by the end of March or April, we'll have another channel that is fully dedicated to Android development. So let me see if I can get myself a little bit larger in the screen. Okay, and I'm just looking at the chat here. So how is everyone doing today? I see a lot of you guys that are coming in. I think the live stream is always a little more interesting when you can see the chat on the left side, or this side rather, my left side, your right side. And if I go in the live dashboard, so we have 82 YouTubers, 82 of you guys watching. So cool, very cool stuff. So we have, let me just see who's on the channel. We have Cesar. I'm guessing this is David, David, Andre, Ekin, Yufuk, Alexander, Dennis Mueller, Jean, Ibrahima, Tafik, Vishal, Cesar. Wow, a lot of new faces that I'm seeing on this channel. And so lately it's been a little bit interesting with the channel and the subscriber ratio. For whatever reason, a lot of people are finding this channel and subscribing to the channel. So it definitely does go a long way to help support what we're doing here. And I don't really know why there's been an uptick in subscribers being able to find this YouTube channel. So one thing that I've been hearing about lately, and this is a theory that's been going around the YouTube community, is that the On the Rise feature that YouTube has been pushing out, basically On the Rise is, what is this feature called? So YouTube had this other feature where they were trying to push new YouTube creators to the top, and On the Rise is YouTube's latest effort in trying to, I guess, get more awareness to smaller channels. And perhaps that's kind of the reason why we have a little bit more subscribers, I guess, this month or these last 2 weeks. Yeah. Hello, everyone. So there's this little money thing on the side where you can send a super chat. And if you guys want to support the channel by sending a super chat, your message that you can fill out in this little box here, depending on how much money you want to donate. If you put $5 in there, your message gets shown in a highlight in this chat area. If you donate $10, your message gets pinned, I believe, up here somewhere near the top of the live chat. So that's that's kind of what this super chat thing is. And if you guys want to support the channel, you guys can donate or not. Really depends on you. So I have a question right here. Would you prefer a super chat or a mentoring hour? So I think I mentioned this in a previous video before. If you want to support the channel, definitely pay for something that you'll get in return. This is why I don't have donations set up on the channel. This is the closest thing to a donation, the super chat. And I really feel like you guys should, I guess, use your money wisely. Definitely get something out of the hard-earned cash that you have. So let's go ahead and start with something that I've been wanting to talk about for a little bit now. So I'm going to shrink myself down. And I'll get to your guys' question in just a little bit. I want to first start off by looking at the simulator here. And so we have Android versus iOS development differences. So today's video is not about the Android, I guess. It's not really about the differences between the Android OS versus the iOS platform OS. All right, so we have Peter with a very first donation of £5. Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for all your support. Yeah, thank you for everyone's support. It's something that does help me out a lot in terms of growing on the channel and making sure that I'm able to provide all of the tutorials, all of the videos, and just pretty much everything that I can do for you guys. So, yeah. All right, back on topic right here. So today's video, I want to go through Objective-C, Swift versus Java, Kotlin. So some of you guys that haven't heard of Kotlin, it's basically you had Objective-C for iOS development, right? And then you have Java for Android development. And then when Swift came out, you kind of have this new language that made it extremely easy to kind of develop iOS applications without typing so much. And Swift allows you to just easily build out apps. And then Kotlin is pretty much the equivalent to Swift. Java Objective-C is extremely verbose, where you have to type out everything, and you don't get really, really nice features such as type references and optionals. So Swift and Kotlin supports those kind of natively out of the box. So let's click into the very first list item here. And so both languages, Objective-C, Java, Kotlin, and Swift, they're all very capable languages. Swift and Kotlin syntax is very similar. You have question marks that represent optionals, and you can also unwrap it with a question mark. And then, so the idea of optionals is very, very similar. You just have nullable objects that you can check for the lack of the existence of a value. So that's very nice. Okay, let me just get to Young Murda C. Thanks for working so hard on creating the content you do. Really enjoying the YouTube series. Yeah, the YouTube series has been going pretty well. I think there's a notable difference between the YouTube series versus that Firebase chat series and the YouTube series on how to build YouTube. You'll notice that the chat and the YouTube series, all of the videos on there are like super long, and it built out a lot of different features, but I feel like I think a lot of us kind of I don't know, don't like longer videos, and because we don't have enough time to watch them all. And so the Twitter series, you'll notice that each video is about 15 minutes long, and then we've been able to get everything. Like we've been able to get this pretty complex list built out in just like 10 or 11 episodes. And in the whole course of it, we've went over like really, really important topics such as JSON, how to parse JSON. We're going to talk about error handling whenever your network experiences an error in fetching something from the internet. And then I'm thinking about going through generics as well. So generics is a very important topic that I think everyone should learn about. Yeah, video and audio is not in sync. Yeah, I can't really figure out what to do about the audio and video. So anyways, thank you, William Andre William Andre Geraldo Rincon. Thank you very much. I think COP. I'm not really sure what COP is. Like I said last time, I really wish there was a currency conversion here as an option. I know this is at least $5 to $10 because it's pinned on the very top. Perhaps it's $1,000. You never know. Colombian pesos. Yeah, can you guys tell me how much 10,000 Colombian pesos are? Is that like $5? Yeah, my conversion is really bad here. All right, so let's see what else is on this little item here. Okay, one huge difference is that Xcode Swift auto-completion and class recognition feels broken or slow. For example, when you're creating a new class inside of Swift, you find yourself, you have to build the project before this class is available in another Swift file. And I mean, you can type out the Swift class and then it's actually there, but then it doesn't recognize it in the autocomplete. So a lot of times you feel like the Xcode editor is kind of broken, right? And whenever you try to do things and you try to type out code, the syntax autocompleter just doesn't pick up on your new classes. Sometimes the constructor doesn't use the correct instantiation parameters, and then sometimes your class just doesn't autocomplete altogether. So some of these little minor bugs in the Xcode editor makes it feel like you're not actually using something that's very modern. And I even feel like Objective-C, the auto-completion of Objective-C was a lot better. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but the Swift compiler and the whole Xcode Swift language, it just feels like it's broken in a lot of places. So, okay, $3.5. That's very good. Thank you very much. I think it was William for the support and Young Murtis. So let's see what kind of questions that we have on this chat. Feels like there are quite a few. All right, hello from everyone. Portugal. We have a lot of people from, I guess, India as well. Alan Edmonds, new face, I believe. We have Darren. I don't think I've seen Darren before. I've seen Rock App. Rab, I feel like, is a new subscriber. Hello from Toronto. Why not we work on Xamarin? Well, Xamarin is C#, which I haven't touched C# in like 7 years. So you probably don't want to see me using C# at all. All right, here's an interesting comment. Thank you for everything you're doing. I got my first freelancing job thanks to your videos. That is really, really good stuff. I've gotten a couple, maybe like 5 to 10 messages on Twitter, YouTube, and email, just about people that are getting jobs, freelance, internships based on these videos. And that's pretty exciting. I think doing a little bit of good in the world. Kind of, hopefully, this continues to roll forward in terms of, I guess, karma. All right, I'm a Ruby junior developer, but I like Swift. No very basic, and I want to create an iOS app with backend Rails API or advice for Swift backend. Yeah, that's a pretty common question. What are your thoughts on mobile app development using React Native? React Native is kind of new. I feel like React Native is still in its infancy, where a lot of things are changing. And the thing that I'm most uncomfortable about React Native is that the actual runtime of your iOS app in React Native is not the native runtime of a typical app that you'll build through Xcode. And you're inside of a kind of a JavaScript browser thing inside of an app. You can kind of treat it as like a container, and that container allows you to do a lot of cool things like refreshing the UI with just a click of a button. You can do a lot of cool stuff. So I'm not really sold on React Native for mobile yet. I like the direction that it's going, but then similar to everything else that's been trying to do this in the past, such as Adobe Air or Flash, there's Titanium, Appcelerator, all these like cross-compile platforms, which every time a new version of iOS comes out, you have to wait for the update to those libraries, and then you have Android Studio and all the new Android OSs coming out. I don't really feel like those cross-compiler solutions work all that well. All right, so we have Griffith with SEK. I don't know exactly what SEKs are, but thank you for the 20 SEKs. I'm going to assume that's, there's really no way for me to figure out what the conversion rate is. So I have one comment here that says the autocompletion on Swift sucks. Yeah, autocompletion on Swift is not good at all. Like, it almost feels like I would rather use a text editor sometimes to type out my Swift code. And that's, we're in 2017. We shouldn't feel like the text, the notepad is better. So anyways, that's kind of what I find sort of annoying about developing on Xcode. Just the Xcode editor it feels really buggy, like extremely, extremely buggy. When you're coming from, so I guess my past is, I used to use something called Eclipse. A lot of you guys have probably heard of Eclipse. And basically Eclipse is a super, super old editor that a lot of us used to write Java code in. And then as Eclipse grew and grew and grew, it got more and more clunky and more buttons started showing up everywhere. And after a while, it just became super heavy. And then IntelliJ came in and they developed this IntelliJ IDE that allows you to compile your Java code really, really quickly. There's not a lot inside of the editor, so it's really, really fast. And so everyone kind of shifted over to IntelliJ. And then when IntelliJ quickly became this pretty well-known IDE builder, the Android team, Google, decided to adopt Android Studio or IntelliJ. Now they call it Android Studio, but it's built off the IntelliJ IDE. And then IntelliJ, they wrote their own language called Kotlin, which cross-compiles down to Java. And then you can build out Java applications as well as Android applications using Kotlin. So IntelliJ is just a super, super modernized company. And I paid like $300 for the IntelliJ license, and it's definitely paid off. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, Griffith, thank you again. Great channel and videos, inspiring and motivating. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I want to bring up here. I feel like whenever you're kind of stuck on an iOS or any type of programming problem, if you can find the right inspiration, it really goes a long way. Sometimes you just feel like you're stuck, and seeing someone else code helps you a lot. All right, Jean Louis Armel, you are a point of light. Yep. Thank you very much. So let's see what this person has to say. Nitin Mutayala. I've been using Storyboard, but after watching you, I'm slowly shifting to pure code. Maybe you can make a video on how I can migrate. Yeah, migrating from the Storyboard to Swift, pure code, or pure programmatic approach is pretty easy. So when I say easy, I mean it's like it takes an hour worth of Googling to figure out all of the parts you need to kind of use to migrate your code. And the one thing I want to recommend for you guys to, I guess in terms of migrating Swift storyboard code to Swift code, is to slowly separate all of your view controllers into its own storyboards. And then once you have like 20 different view controller storyboards, you can slowly eliminate each and every one of those storyboards into a pure programmatic file. And yeah, so all of you guys already know how I feel about storyboards, and it's a good tool, but sometimes building things out in code allows for more flexibility later on. So we have Young Murda C with another $5 donation. Thank you very much, Young Murda C. Are you a rapper of some kind? I really like that name, Young Murda. Maybe I should change my my YouTube channel name to something else like suitable for 2017 with a really cool. Okay, so enough questions. You guys can just kind of chat amongst yourselves. So the next thing I want to talk about is auto layout versus. So some of you guys that haven't done, so I'm trying to read the questions and talk at the same time, which is not helping. Okay, so auto layout, which is iOS, and then you have Android XML layout, which is usually something with a linear layout, and something else called a relative layout. So relative layout is something that you put things onto the screen, and you say, okay, here's one object, and here's another one, align it to this guy, to the right of it, and to the bottom of it. And then you align another one to relative to that layout. So if you think about it, it's kind of similar to auto layout in that respect. And then you have this thing called linear layout, which is kind of similar to UI stack view. So both of these systems take similar approaches to laying things out. Okay, and here's the thing. Have you ever felt like auto layout is kind of strange, awkward, and clumsy, but you can't really exactly describe why it feels that way? So for some of you guys that feel like auto layout is really strange, I definitely recommend trying out HTML layout and also Android layout. And you'll notice that the intuitiveness of Android and HTML is it's a lot easier to understand how the layout works, because the brain, I guess the way we think of layout is sort of like expand everything this way, expand everything this way. Children elements inside of a container should expand fully horizontally or fully vertically. So this is like sort of intuition in terms of laying things out. Auto layout doesn't really support this, and they recently introduced the UI stack view, which is meant to kind of fill this void. And so if you're trying to, if you really want to understand why auto layout feels really strange, it's because it doesn't really conform to the traditional layout of HTML and just systems in general. So I say definitely give it a try, and then you'll see that, oh, Android auto layout is really, really strange. So that's kind of what I have to say about that. And then Android, okay, there's a storyboard which I don't really like in Xcode, and then there's the XML editor in Android, which I really do like. So why do I like the visual editor of Android, but I don't really like the visual editor of Xcode or Interface Builder? I don't really like Interface Builder. And I don't really know exactly why Interface Builder feels so clunky. Like there's just there's just too many toggles, switches, drop downs, buttons, and too many things hidden within that right side menu bar in Interface Builder. And the reason why I like the Android XML editor is because it still relies on typing out code, and the XML editor is very accessible. That's what I think, and it's human readable, whereas the storyboard is not exactly human readable. So yeah, definitely give Android XML editor a try if you haven't seen it before or if you haven't used it before, and then you'll kind of realize how auto layout is. It feels really, really strange. That's what I have to say. And then so a lot of you guys that have seen the Twitter series, you know that I have this thing called this anchor extension method, and with that one long line, I can just anchor everything onto the screen pretty easily. And if I didn't have that method, I would go crazy trying to lay out everything. So auto layout is pretty strange. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. So Interface Builder it's super awkward. All right. I'm going to go over this little example here, which is this Android simulator. Let me just drag it over here and see if I can expand it a little bit. So let's see, put it here maybe. Let me just drag this over here. Okay, so there's that. I'm just going to try to tab back over to the Twitter app. You guys can see Instagram app. What is this guy? Twitter demo. Okay, so here is the Twitter demo. I think I'm dragging the wrong thing. And these images are not loading because I'm currently streaming. My connection doesn't really download things as I'm streaming. So here's the app, the iOS version of the app. It's a lot more polished, right? And so yesterday night, I spent like 2 to 3 hours trying to build out this Android version of the app. And so if I just drag this over a little bit. This is the Android version of the app that I spent, I would say probably an hour and a half to 2 hours trying to build. And at the same time, I was learning how to use Kotlin for the first time. And Kotlin is pretty easy to use. It does take a little bit of time to get used to it, but it's not that difficult because if you know Swift already, it's like pretty simple. And so here's the app, and we have the exact same XML or the exact same JSON file that's being parsed into this app as the iOS version. So everything is exactly the same, comes from the exact same JSON source. And so laying out this entire view, so let me break this down a little bit. So this entire view right here, this list is called a recycler view. And a lot of you guys that haven't done this before, usually you would use a linear or a list view. Is that what it's called? A list view of some kind. And now we have this thing called a recycler view, which is a better version of that. And building out this guy took a little bit of time, but it wasn't that difficult because there are JSON parsing libraries that you can just parse out everything that you need into your Java classes or your Kotlin classes. And then you can lay out everything pretty simple in terms of a row that belongs inside of your table view or your recycler view. So this is, I guess 95% of applications require this type of interaction. Like you have some kind of list view, and then you have a bunch of JSON items filling out that list view. So pretty simple stuff. That's what the app does. Okay, so let's get back to the simulator. Where are you? Here. Tab back over this thing right here. Okay, so let's see. The next thing I want to get to is programmatic UI. And trying to build out UI in Java programmatically is extremely verbose. So Java, pretty well known for being super wordy and having to type a lot of code. And so it's much easier to do things in Kotlin now, which is, I guess, the Swift equivalent to Objective-C. And building things in code means you have reusable views and layouts that you can easily stick into different components. If you like Storyboards, you'll find Android XML layout system very easy to use. Yeah, so I think I talked about programmatic UI for a little bit now. Let's move on to App Store versus the Play Store. So one major difference with the App Store and the Play Store is that whenever you submit your app into the Play Store, it takes about half an hour to have your app available in the Play Store for everyone to start downloading it. You'll notice that when you submit your app to the App Store, it takes about 4 to 5 days sometimes for it to get through the entire review process. And then even after you hit the submit button, when your application is good to go, it takes like another few hours for it to actually reach all the servers and kind of refresh the App Store with your new release version. And you notice that this happens a lot. Every time you have to submit an app, you have to worry about, okay, did I introduce a bug? Can I reverse the bug easily? How do I engineer my server so that if there is a bug, I can fix it on the fly? So you go through all these things with an iOS type of app. And when you're on the Google platform, if your app has a bug, your new version, your new release, you can easily roll back to the previous stable version with just like a click of a toggle button on the left and right side. You say disable this new version, enable this other version, and then everything's good to go. So I find myself not having to worry so much about releasing Android apps because I know I can just pull back the version whenever I want to. And this is not to say that, okay, don't worry about bugs in your application. You still have to test your app. You still have to make sure everything works properly. And the unfortunate thing is that the App Store has this huge process where you have to go through an insane amount of wait time, approval, make sure Apple doesn't think that your app is doing anything bad. I mean, there are pros and cons to this whole thing, and maybe you get more polished apps on the App Store, but as a developer where you know what you're doing, it gets very frustrating when you have to release something onto the App Store, knowing that it takes a couple of days just to get it through and update it, which kind of sucks, in my opinion. Okay, let me just finish up with this topic here. So CocoaPod versus Gradle. A lot of you guys that are iOS developers know that in order to easily build out apps, you need dependencies to be built into your application, your code base. So CocoaPods allows you to easily download libraries from an external source and then just incorporate that code into your Swift application super easily. Same thing exists on Android, and the system is built on this thing called a Gradle. Um, and Gradle is just a simple build file where you insert pods or insert your dependencies, and then you hit this little download sync button, and everything just works. Okay, so dependency package management exists on both platforms. On iOS, there are many options now, such as Swift Package Manager and Carthage and CocoaPods. I don't really like this type of fragmentation in the community. I think it gets pretty confusing if you're especially new to iOS development. How do you know what to pick? Like the official, is it official? The Swift Package Manager, which is the Swift official dependency management system. CocoaPods, which has been out for ages, like 5, 6, 7 years now. And then you have this thing called Carthage, which breaks the dependency of all of the CocoaPods that might have conflict with each other. So there are 3 systems on iOS. How do you know which one to pick? Well, everyone defaults to CocoaPods right now. I feel like there's a shift in dependency management where things will slowly become managed by Swift Package Manager. That's kind of what I feel. And then hopefully the community will settle down on one package manager that we're all happy with. So eventually we'll get there, but within the Gradle's Android ecosystem, you have something called Gradle, which is the system that everyone has settled on. Before Gradle, there was this thing called Maven, and then before Maven, there was this thing called Ant. It's not exactly Ant. It's not a dependency package manager, but Ant allows you to incorporate jars, which is what Java programs are dependent on. You guys are probably not interested in Java from what I can tell. Okay, let's get to some questions here. I hate Objective-C. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. I guess it really depends on what your background is. So I come from C and Java and also ActionScript. So Objective-C felt like the same in terms of pain points, frustration. I feel like they were all the same things, all the same problems existed between all those languages. And Swift is definitely a lot better than Objective-C. So my experience learning Objective-C wasn't all that bad. All right, we have Mobeek. I love Recycler View. Yeah. The only thing that's strange about Recycler View is that I guess what's lacking with Objective or Recycler View is that you don't have these things called headers and footers. And I find myself having to build out the entire list manually without having the option of using sections. So that was kind of strange. And I thought that Android was going to support sections natively, but that's not the case yet. So having to build out your own sections is a little strange now that we're in 2017. All right, Rafael, I am slowly becoming like you, always using collection view for my views. You really inspired me. So we mentioned this last week, UI table view versus UI collection view. You'll find that if you build everything out in UI collection view, you have the option to do much, much more. And UI collection view was meant to replace UI table view. That's why Apple decided to introduce this new UI kit component. And you can support horizontal layout, you can support multiple layout, I guess flow layout is one of them. Yeah, you can define a lot of things. So I do recommend using collection view like 99% of the time over UI table view. Okay. So what do you think about Xamarin? A lot of people I have talked to don't have all the best to say about it. Well, the thing about Xamarin is that like you have to learn this new syntax if you don't know C# yet. and then you have to learn what's available in Xamarin that's not natively supported. So I mean, I always prefer going native if you can, but I do understand that not everyone wants to learn a new syntax such as Java or Kotlin or Swift. All right, we have another donation by Mobik, I believe. ARS 50. No idea how much that is, but thank you very much. Do you normally use continuous integrations? And what about UI and unit testing? It's always a must or just a pain? All right, pretty good question. A lot of you guys, so from what I can tell, a lot of you guys are pretty knowledgeable in terms of development. A lot of you guys are really, really smart, and a lot of you guys are pretty experienced. So continuous integration is something that more experienced developers will use. I don't know how much I should explain about what CI is. So how many of you guys know what these CI tools are? I'm curious. Okay, so basically continuous integration allows you to just commit code to GitHub, right? And then every time a commit is pushed into the main repository, a separate system called continuous integration kicks off a build of your application, and then it figures out if any of your tests are broken with new code. So basically, it's to check whether or not your code base is failing based on your tests. And the question is, what do I think about unit testing, and is it a must or is it a pain? So unit testing is definitely a must if you're building out a really, really complicated application, and it becomes more important as your team grows. And if you find that more people are touching your code base, the only way to make sure everything works is if you have unit testing built in. So if you don't have unit testing, it's really difficult to make sure the payment system is not broken anymore. What you'll find is you sometimes release an app onto the App Store, and then perhaps someone changed the payment key, the Stripe payment key inside of your application. Someone might have toggled the development key, or toggled from production key to development key, and then once your app hits the App Store, you can no longer accept payments inside of your app, which is a pretty disastrous thing to have happen on production. So unit testing allows for simple checks like that to not occur inside of production. I feel like it is a pain. I know that whenever I try to implement unit testing, it almost feels like it takes twice as much time for me to build out proper unit testing as opposed to building out new features. So what happens a lot is that you're in a startup company, you don't build out your testing. 2-3 years down the road, you realize that, okay, I really need to test my code. I have all this debt now, this code debt. And then you slowly start to build out your testing to make sure your code works. Yeah. So what is this thing about PH asset? Okay, how to get image location from camera. I tried EXIF data from info, but no location data. Maybe call CL location during image picker. I don't think you have to do all this. Yeah, so built into all of these images, inside of the metadata of these images that you snap on your phone, there is a very, very simple there's a simple way to just pull out the location very easily. So yeah. All right, we have another question here. How proficient do I need to be to qualify for a junior iOS position? So that's really hard to say. Let's talk about internships first. If you want to get an internship for your very first kind of feel for what iOS development looks like professionally, you need to know how to. You don't even need to know iOS development in the first place. You just need to know how to program. So if you can do things like, build out a map of stuff using hash tables, know how to deal with asynchronicities or network calls, know how to deal with, what else is there? Recursion. If you know how to do those things, then you can pretty much be an iOS developer. Okay, what else do we have here? All right, so here's an interesting question. What is the best way to learn data structures and algorithms for interviews? Yeah, I don't know. The thing about interviews is that you just have to get lucky and you have to find the interviewer that's going to give you the interview question that you already sort of know how to solve. And sometimes you'll run into those questions that you don't know how to solve. That's sort of how it works. Yeah. Okay, so you prefer not to use Storyboard on iOS. Do you suggest same thing for Android? Uh, so I personally use the visual editor for Android a lot, uh, but the visual editor is not something where you drag and drop things into. I mean, you could if you want to, but the visual editor for Android is XML that you type inside of a file. So it's more maintainable. And yeah, just use that. Talk about game development and Sprite Kit. So I don't have a lot of experience developing games. I really wish I did. But you have to learn something called Unity if you want to get into game development. I have like 2 tutorials that I've gone through using Unity. And the reason why I haven't gone into the game development is because I find that, right, like time invested in game development doesn't give you as much return, or doesn't give me as much return as perhaps building out systems that you can support on multiple platforms. Like if I were to choose game development versus learning something like Android, I would say learn Android. But that's just me. I don't really enjoy game development that much. But yeah, if you really like game development, definitely go into it. Like if you hate Android development, don't go into Android development. That's pretty easy, pretty sound advice. Okay. Is it easier to design UI on Android or iOS? That's a hard question to answer. I think whether or not it's easier, I can't say it's easier or harder on either platforms. I'd say they're both really strange. I guess designing UI in iOS, because I've done it more, might be easier. Yeah, because I do have more experience designing UI in iOS, so it feels like it's easier. On Android, things feel a little more rigid. Yeah. So if you open up your applications on iOS on your phone right here, and I have an Android tablet, right? Well, the thing I've noticed is the huge difference between the UI on iOS and Android is that the iOS UI seems way more advanced or complicated. Or not complicated, but it seems more sophisticated. Things like the acceleration of the bounce, the creativity of the UI in iOS. You find that there are a lot more different, like the experimentation of UI in iOS. A lot of designers will typically create things that are fancier in iOS. And in Android, things are kind of restricted to like a box, an icon here, a grid over here. It's like very robotic is probably how I would describe it. So yeah, like that's just kind of how things have evolved. In iOS, creativity is kind of free to flow. I don't know if it's because the whole Apple environment feels like you can do that more. But on the Android side of things, it definitely feels like there's not a whole lot of creativity. Like everything's a list, everything's a box, everything is here, here, here. It, yeah. So hopefully you guys notice that too. All right, so we have Parthenon. Any other paid courses coming? So what can I say about this? Yeah, I'm working on things that are going to be a lot more educational, sophisticated, and here's a demo of what I can show, I guess. So let's look at this Instagram demo thing. Okay, so if I just kill this guy, so this is not going to show very well inside of the live stream. So this is just going to load, and load. Yeah, this is not going to show very well. Let's see. I want to be able to show this Instagram app that I've been building out, and hopefully you guys can see what the next course is going to be about. Okay, let's see, what do I got here? So I'm just loading the app on my phone, and hopefully we can see. So I think I have the Android Studio guy here. Let me see if I can drag this up here. And so here's what Android Studio looks like. It has a white background, but I just haven't gotten around to changing the default settings of the color. So QuickTime, let's see, where are you? Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this screen from my phone here. And basically you have your Instagram app, right? So everything is black and white. And that's because I'm testing out the filters of core image and seeing what I can do easily using the kind of out of the box filtering libraries. So here's Instagram, and here's kind of something that's built using Firebase. And so Firebase supports everything that you can upload into the post, or this is the home, right? So let's take a look at this screen right here. So this is a this is chicken that you normally would eat on Chinese New Year, or at least for my family. And you basically cook a chicken, you steam it, and then you eat it. I don't know if you guys have chopped a chicken with your bare hands before, but normally you would have to kind of butcher it before you can eat it. So let's see what's interesting here. I don't know if I have any comments for this. So this is the profile page for my phone. And yeah, you see how it looks very, very similar to the Instagram app. What else can I show here? If I show the simulator, I can follow this person here, and then now I'm following this person. And then here's the ad image thing. So let's see, if I So I'm currently testing out the sepia filter. That's why this thing looks sepia tone. And if I perhaps use this image here, I can hit next, and then here's the fancy Japanese restaurant where waitresses are dressed in cute outfits. So you share it. It gets uploaded onto the Firebase database side of things, and let's see if I can pull it out. And right above here, it doesn't automatically refresh right now, but when you pull the page down, you just get the new library or a new image that was uploaded. That's kind of what this looks like. I'm kind of debating on how much of this Instagram app I want to build out, because there's a lot of features here that can be very, very difficult to build. And I sort of want to get this course out so that you guys can see how to further play with Firebase to see what you can and can't support. So let me just drag this out of the way here. Don't really want to show my phone. So that's my phone. It's always kind of tricky to show your phone while you're live streaming. You don't want to show things inappropriate that pop up. So let's see. Let me close out of that guy. Okay. And this simulator is not very interesting. Let's look at this thing. Okay. So this is the last question before we kind of wrap it up for this today's stream. So which platform is harder to learn in terms of, okay, I want to learn mobile development. Should I go into Android or should I go into iOS? So both platforms have kind of frustrating hurdles that you need to get past if you're just starting out. If you're looking at the most common use case of integrating a list of JSON objects into a list view, sort of like the Twitter application we have on iOS, and also this emulator right here. Both platforms are about the same in terms of difficulty. I think it all boils down to how often you open up the Xcode editor and how often you find yourself diving into Android code. And then sometimes I find myself typing Kotlin code in Xcode, and then sometimes I'll be typing Swift in the Android Studio editor. And so every now and then, you find yourself having to deal with Android issues and then Xcode, iOS issues. And as you develop or as you code more and more in those platforms, you just get more and more comfortable in it. If you're starting out as a new developer, I think it might be easier just so it's not easy and it's not hard to build out these mobile applications. Yeah, you'll find that everything is just a list view, and then you have to integrate JSON in it, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing special about mobile development, and it's relatively the same in terms of learning how to use. Okay, so it says, Guy, I ran into a problem with uploading images to Firebase storage and then uploading data to Firebase data. What should I do? Well, I mean, I don't know. What should you do? If you follow that Firebase chat series, I mean, we upload images to Firebase, no problem. And then we upload data to Firebase, also no problem. So I don't really know what else I can do to help you out. Like everything that we've done on that tutorial is pretty straightforward. It's hard to, I guess, do things incorrectly, but it does happen. So we have Krutomjer. So besides knowing Swift, what else do you need to know, like Cocoa in iOS? Or besides knowing Java, what else do you need to know? So if you know how to build iOS apps already right now, you'll notice that everything, like I said before, is just a list of stuff. And the first thing you need to know in Android is that how do I build out a list of stuff? So that takes about maybe an hour or two to figure out. And then after that, you should be good to go. Let's see. I expect more Firebase tutorials from you. Best wishes. Yeah, hopefully. So the Instagram Firebase tutorial is really, really interesting. And once it's out, you guys can purchase it and see if you guys can build out really, really interesting apps. Okay, Jeremy Connolly, this may sound kind of dumb, but I haven't messed with Android development in about 2 years. Can you set up layout constraints in the activity similar to iOS, or is it exclusively controlled with XML? Is it exclusively controlled with XML? So yes. Yeah, I don't really understand that question. Layout system works kind of like HTML. You have tables, you have vertical stretchiness of your components, and then everything is kind of based on how big your parent container is. Really straightforward. Okay, I start to learn Java and some basic Android development, but I hear Swift is more easy to develop. Should I continue Android or switch for Swift because I don't have much time? Well, if you don't have much time, then I don't think you should be working on Android or Swift. You should probably do something else that's more meaningful in life. Android doesn't have a storyboard equivalent. It's more like Zib or Nib for iOS. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. So some of you guys that have used Zibs and Nibs know that you can reuse those Zib files really easily. And that's kind of what Android is all about. Do you have experience with image processing applications? Not really so much. Yeah. What else is here? Do you have any tutorials on VC transition animation? Haven't done that so far. So we have, you should look up Firebase documentation guide. Yeah, so for Guy, Yanai. The Firebase documentation is one of the best I've seen. Although it's really, really short and simple, I think they lay out everything really, really nicely. Yeah. How do you read this? Su. How do Su Wei Man. Is Wei. I can't read this word anymore. Am I pronouncing this correctly? Su Wei Man. Man. 应该是苏威曼吧. Should I worry about Apple's drop down as a iOS developer? I don't really know exactly what you mean by Apple's drop down. Can anyone tell me what this person means by Apple's drop down? Yeah. So do I prefer Java or Swift? So this question, you should really be framing it as, should you prefer Kotlin over Swift? If you're just talking about Java and Swift, I definitely prefer Swift over Java because there's not a lot of typing involved in Swift. And if you phrase the question as, do I prefer Kotlin over Swift? I can't say right now. I can't say which which language is better, Swift or Kotlin. So the thing, okay, so here's the major advantage to Kotlin. So when you're typing out code in Swift, it's always very, very irritating that the code completion doesn't come out within like half a second. When you're coming from IntelliJ and something that's like super, super fast, you just type out code and it's as fast as you can think about it and process it in your head. When you're in Xcode, I find myself typing things out and then it takes like 2 to 3 seconds for the thing to pop up and to find the right auto-completion block to use. I don't know, something about waiting I don't really like about Swift. But yeah. All right, so we have Joshua Flores with $30 US. Thank you very much, Joshua. I think you've been a follower for quite some time now. I really recognize this name. Thanks for all the hard work on these tutorials. It would be great to see some testing, but still, this is a superb channel and I'm happy to support you. Well, thank you very much, Joshua. It does mean a lot. So testing is hard, to say the least. And unit testing is very fun, actually. I do enjoy testing. I don't know about UI testing, though, in terms of using that Swift Xcode interface builder testing thing. I want to... okay, so I've been thinking about doing some testing tutorials for quite some time now. And what you need before you can build out a really good tutorial is an application that's sophisticated and complicated enough so that you can show why unit testing is helpful. I think maybe the Twitter application is complicated enough where we can start to see some meaningful unit test cases. And then if I can't come up with any good unit testing examples, I'll have to, I don't know, be a little bit more creative about it. Yeah. Unit testing is definitely a requirement. Okay, so we have Akin Gudongu. How old are you and how long or how many years of experience do I have? So I am 32 this year. So I was born in 1984, which is a good year. Definitely a lot of important things occurred on that year, such as, well, it didn't occur, but George Orwell released this book called 1984, which is really, really, really famous for describing what the current administration is trying to do in the United States and just everywhere. For those of you guys that haven't read 1984, definitely give it a good read. 梅洛，苏威曼，梅洛，没错吧？是梅洛，我不太懂梅洛是什么意思。Let's see. You can easily start with Swift programming without knowing much in math. So one thing that I talked about, or I neglected to mention in that video about whether or not college is important, is even the math classes that I took at UC Berkeley, those classes, anything that talked about theory, I felt were pretty much kind of useless. Yeah, any type of math class you take, you don't really need it inside of computer programming. Anyone that tells you that you need math to program, I don't think they know what they're talking about. I mean, so the thing is, if you're good in math, you're probably going to be good in programming. And if you're good in programming, you're also probably going to be good in math. And that's just because the logic that you need in order to program is similar to the logic that you need to solve mathematical problems. But whether or not you need math to be good at programming, I don't think you do. So, okay, he doesn't like to use storyboards. He does it in code. Yeah. So the thing about the storyboard and the coding thing is like, yeah, like I used to use storyboards a lot, not a bad tool to use. If I prefer it over anything else, like coding is more fun. I got into programming to code, not to use a editor. And the example that I always bring up is, okay, this YouTube channel, this whole chat box that I'm looking at, the YouTube video player, the entire YouTube website. Do you like who really thinks that the entire YouTube site is built on some kind of HTML visual editor, right? It's not. Anything that's serious that you want to build out where you can support over 4 to 5 years, you typically will not use a visual editor to build it out. That's how programmers are. I mean, that's why you pay programmers a lot of money, because programming and keeping code maintainable, keeping it clean, it takes a lot of time, and it takes someone that's very smart to do it correctly. Wow, looks like something happened to my chat box. Okay. Getting the Swift 3 book will have it teach you the basics, so I don't really know which Swift 3 book we're talking about. Unit testing is a standard requirement for a job, for an iOS job these days. Is that correct? I don't know if that's correct or not. I do want to make a video soon where I'm going to talk about what makes you stand out as an iOS developer. And I think if you know unit testing, you'll stand out. If you know server-side programming, you'll stand out. If you know how to build things out programmatically, you will also stand out and impress the person that you're getting the interview from. So if you want to be a little bit, different compared to the competition out there, you want to know server-side programming, you want to know programmatic UI building, you want to know unit testing, and you want to know how to build Android apps. So if you know these 4 things, there's really no reason why I would not hire you if you're applying for a job at whatever company I'm working at. Okay, do you think it's possible to become world-class in both, or just managing really good in one and okay in another? So currently I would consider myself like pretty decent at iOS development, and in Android development, I think I'm okay. And the whole reason is because Java is extremely sophisticated, and you can do so many things in Java that you just do not know. Like Java is a really, really cool language. And Swift is also extremely sophisticated. So, okay, so the thing about being a world class or being an expert in one language, I don't think you should aim for that as your goal in terms of your professional career. So let me pose this question. Would you hire someone okay, so let's say you're a startup company and you're looking for engineers to work for your company. Who would you hire? Would you hire the guy that's known to be the number one, the top developer for iOS, but he doesn't know how to build out your server? Would you hire that guy, or would you hire the guy that is pretty good in iOS, Android, server-side development, and all this other stuff? Who would you hire? Who would you hire? So that's kind of my question to that question there. Let's see. Someday Apple will close down, learn something new. Yes. Thank you, brothers. How do you learn to make apps using code? From Maria Mendez. So learning apps. So this is a pretty common question that I get, which is, how did I go from the storyboard to knowing how to build out every bit of UI in code? And the whole thing about that, or the correct answer to that, is that look at Stack Overflow, look at Google, and then use the autocomplete to sort of figure out how things are built. So it's obviously going to be harder for people that don't come from a programming background. So here's the whole thing about programmatic UI. If you have experience working with code 8 hours a day, you're not going to find like programmatic UI is not anything new. It's just typing out more code. So before I learned how to build out everything in iOS, I programmed for like 10 hours a day at a job where I was paid, a lot of money to program. So programming is like, for me, it's kind of like riding a bike. You just ride it. It's not anything new. And if you want to learn how to get off of the storyboard, you just have to Google things. Yeah, that's kind of my experience and my background. Okay. Okay. Where are we here? I think I kind of lost my position. Okay, 1984, a good book. Orwell published 1984 way before 1984. Yep, that is correct. Bankruptcy. I think you need to spend most of your time to be good. The more you work, every language has become easier. If you don't stick to one pattern like object-oriented languages. Yeah, so the overall message there is that when you're learning anything new, you just have to spend more time in it, and then you become really, really good at it, and then you just get more comfortable with it. So for example, for me, I really did not like JavaScript until I used React.js, and now JavaScript is not that bad because I've been using it for quite a while. Am I married? Do I have a kid? I am not married, and I do not have any kids. Your channel is great. Donation is now available in my country, Azerbaijan, so I can't do any donation. Sorry. Well, it's okay. Do not worry about any donations at all. Like if you want to support the channel, you can purchase that iOS course. It's in the description for this video. If you don't want to, if you don't want to pay for anything, don't feel obligated to do so. Okay, so multi-paradigm, imperative, functional, etc. makes your code better. Yes. So look up functional programming. It does help you a lot. And if you look at the trends right now, functional programming is becoming more and more of a thing. Imperative, yes. Multi-paradigm, not exactly sure what that means. Please answer me. I think I did. I feel like when I am learning iOS, I am mugging up these steps rather than understanding. Is this normal? Yeah. If you're learning anything new, you're probably going to feel like you're not learning anything until you hit a certain point where, okay, I've done this, and then I try to solve this other problem, and I actually know how to do all this. That's when you feel like you've learned everything. Okay, solve my problem. Thank you very much, guys. Good stuff. Documentation always helps. The only thing you need to know is each OS particularities, and yeah. As long as you have the patience to dive deep into iOS or Android, there's nothing that you cannot figure out. Okay, question. I'm still in high school and trying to learn the best code before college. Any recommendations besides the main JavaScript and HTML? Learn the best code before college. Yeah. So one thing that's kind of irritating or frustrating about these questions, like, what's the best way to do this? What's the best language to learn? What's the best X, Y, and Z? Like, that's something for you to figure out, and something that you'll find whenever you decide to learn one specific thing. You don't like it, you move on to the next thing. You like this thing a lot better. Then you find something else and you like this thing a lot better than every other option. So it's kind of like shopping for shoes or shopping for food. You don't know until you try it. So you just have to try multiple things. Something like mobile development suits me better because I like it. If you are trying to learn something that you don't like, it's not going to suit you very, very much. I work with mobile computer vision applications. Math is important. Depends on what you do. Yep. Yep. So if you work on complicated algorithms and having to implement things like drawing, you definitely need math when it comes to that. But when someone tells you that you need math to become a programmer, that's when that's where I don't really agree. So you're from Morocco. Okay, what language do you think is for the code future, or is for the future of coding? It's hard to say. If I were to put my bet on languages for the future, I would say JavaScript ranks up at the very, very top. And then we have Java, and then we have everything else. So you can't really depend on anything else being future-proof. Okay, do you think about recording video about Android same as my iOS videos? Yeah. We'll see another Android channel pop up probably in March or April. Storyboards or not, it's all code at the end of the day. That is very, very true. Storyboard just generates code that you are not aware of. And then if you have that code sitting in front of you that you can modify, it makes things a lot easier to work with. Recently, I bought a book named iOS Apprentice. Is it a good book? I have not heard of it, so I can't really say. So the thing about books in general is that if you find it helpful, it is a good book. If someone else didn't find it helpful, it's not a good book to them. So it's hard to say what's helpful to you because it really depends on your experience level as well. Okay, thank you guys. More law means decline. I think Tim Cook do not have the ability like Jobs to keep Apple going forward. Yeah, I believe Andy said something about learning new things and expanding your knowledge base so that you don't get left behind whenever something else, some technology gets replaced. Server-side logic knowledge, it's huge nowadays. Mostly because sometimes for a one dev project, you need to think its most endpoints. Yeah. So like I was mentioning before, if you're an iOS developer and you want to stand out amongst all of the iOS developers, definitely learn how to build something, build a server on your own. And the reason is because if I'm hiring a new iOS developer and they already know how to interact with my server in the most basic of ways, that means I don't have to train this new person for like another 2 months or 2 weeks to 3 weeks on how a server works. So that's a lot of time saved on my part. Okay, dude, big fan here by Lacey. Love your videos, and your videos are really inspiring. Yeah, that's good to hear. So one thing I have to say about these videos is that for me to produce them, or for me to code out these apps, is not too difficult because I've done this all before. And the hardest part about building out these videos is trying to break down the lesson for the video so that I can easily explain it. And then the most important thing about these videos is that you have to give the proper context in which we're solving a problem. And I think oftentimes tutorials don't give the proper context. So the Twitter application, we already know exactly what it does. We have pretty good context as to the functionality. And then to explain everything makes it a lot easier. I don't have to explain what an app does because we already know what Twitter does. Okay, so let me get to this donation really, really quickly here. So we have Visionary with $5 American US dollars. Thank you, Visionary. Yeah. So I've seen Visionary in the channel for quite some time now. And I recognize a lot of you guys just coming in every now and then. And some of you guys that are consistently watching the videos, leaving a comment. And yeah, it's good to see people that are kind of sticking with the channel from day one. Yeah. So the channel's been out for like roughly a little bit longer than a year now. And it's doing pretty well. We have close to 19,000 subscribers now, and we're going to hit 20,000 probably within the next week. And things are looking pretty good. So I'm trying to keep it up. So sometimes I definitely do feel like it's harder than other days to record a video. And so, I'll just get my chair. So, yeah. Okay, let's see. From Kenya. All right. But I am Somali. All right. What type of observers should I use in Firebase to get a notification when a new user follows me or sends me a request? Something similar to Instagram or Twitter. So this is the notorious Firebase notification question. So a lot of you guys are wondering, how do I get push notifications on my phone? And you can't really do it easily without a third external or an external server like Node.js that allows you to monitor what's happening. What do you think about certifications like Android Developer Associate Certificate? I think certificates are pretty good if you want to validate yourself on whether or not you know what you're doing. Most of the time, certificates are not really looked at by hiring managers a lot, because certificates are so non-standard that we don't really know what the curriculum for that certificate was or is. I have been hearing you should avoid singletons and consider some sort of dependency injection, but how would you keep track of an authentication session? So how would you keep track of an authentication session? Okay. So avoiding singletons is like a one-day topic that you can talk about forever. Dependency injection is about another week that you can talk about for a long time. And then authenticating your user and maintaining their session is something else that you can talk about for quite some time. So it's hard to answer this question concisely. MVC, MVP, MVVM pattern, what's the difference and when to use them? That's also a pretty common question. The answer to that is use whatever is the simplest so that you can tackle your problem. And then, adopt whatever pattern that you need to maintain your code in the future. Is there no official documentation on programmatic UI in iOS Swift? So the thing about documentation is that it's meant to cater to the masses, and tutorials that you'll find online use Storyboard because it's simple for beginners to kind of get into the platform and learn how to use it. And then once you are no longer a beginner, you notice that, I actually need to construct everything a little more complicated. Like you have to put together a bunch of pieces with code, and that's when you have to learn how to do things programmatically. And you find that the documentation for that is not as well kind of written out. Okay, so we have Divishu Nagi. I am working as a senior Android developer in a company, and I found the work very monotonic, and I also work in personal apps. They are making some money now. Should I leave the job? Well, if you have enough money to support yourself using these apps, then I recommend you, go ahead and leave your job if you don't have any other responsibilities to take care of. In a collection view, is it possible to have more than one custom cell? If you use the LPTA components framework, all you have to do is provide an array of cell classes, and then you can have multiple custom cells. Definitely recommend you look at the Twitter app series to figure out what that looks like. Big question I'd like to know, why didn't you build your own app for the App Store? Since you have so much experience, couldn't you become rich off of an app? So I don't really understand where this misconception is really coming from, where you can get rich from the App Store. That's really no longer the case. It's like hitting the lottery. It's a very similar question. Like, why don't we buy lottery tickets? Because we can become rich from buying lottery tickets. So that's the same logic there. Is Swift a good language to learn as a newbie? Yes, I think it is. Multi-paradigm is like Swift project protocol-oriented programming, OOP, functional imperative, block structured. Yep. FUCK from Panta. Use UI view as Civ view. You can customize anything you want. Any Somali fans out there? I am Somali. Okay. What is your name? Thank you. Good enough by now. A little easier than this videos and use storyboard. Let's see what else is interesting here. For Android, it's a huge plus to know UI programmatically. Most of the complex UI animation needs to be done that way. Yeah. So any language that you are working in, whether it's iOS or Android, you need to know how to do things programmatically. So could you do the complete Audible app? It was very good until you stopped at the login page. What do I want to say about this? So now that we have this custom server up, so what I'm talking about is the api.letsbuildapp.com. So that is a custom server that I'm actually paying money to maintain. So a lot of you guys that are supporting this channel, right? The money kind of goes into that server. And with that server up now, we can put up a lot more content in terms of APIs, what kind of JSON that we want, and maybe perhaps supporting a login system. So now that that server is up, I want to build out more tutorials that use that server. Would you do tutorials on games? Probably not, because I am not good at building out games. What kind of architecture do you use? Have you heard about riblets from Uber? I have not heard about riblets. I'll have to look that up. Okay. What is the disadvantage of using Kotlin for Android development? Not a whole lot. I mean, you have to learn it. That's the one disadvantage. Well, maybe you can see it as an advantage if you're bored. The more natural human readable languages will become the future of programming. Yeah, probably. I guess there's a reason why we don't learn machine language. Yeah, we don't learn that anymore. I think he made a free one. It is on YouTube probably. Yeah. So thank you again for Visionary. If you want to post a message when you donate, you can ask me a question. It'll be pinned up here. What am I drinking? So this is just some instant coffee, which is cold now, unfortunately. Yeah, you're very welcome, Visionary. I'll have to say the lack of libraries, or they always do everything in Java. Okay, parse or Firebase. Obviously Firebase, because parse is no longer a thing, or it's open source. It's hard to stop using storyboards when you are starting out because there aren't as many tutorials. That's true. Could you do a course which is programmatically creating like buttons and stuff? I think I'm doing that in every application on the YouTube channel. How many videos would it take for a Twitter app to complete? So I don't really want to go above 20 videos for the Twitter application. So I might have to start cutting out things out of the app. Maybe I'll go up to like 25 videos. And we'll see. So let's see, Pulse is it just a temporary backend? Yeah, Firebase is kind of temporary before you can really think about, getting a permanent database. So why don't you use storyboards? Okay, pretty good question. You're doing great. Thanks for what you do. Thank you, Liz. Guy, would you do a tutorial on how to build Spotify? I don't know. I mean, I've shown you guys that app before, right? What does it look like? So let's see. What is the Spotify app? I guess it might be easier if I go here. And we have a Spotify, which looks like this. And I think the images will load. So here's Spotify. Yeah, here's that. So the UI is interesting, but it's kind of hard to build. Do I need to be proficient in Objective-C in order to get a job? Probably. I don't know, probably not. Which is your book name, sir? I do not have a book. I have a question on how to persist login data. Well, you just have to persist it either in the keychain or something that's secure, or a cookie of some kind. Do you plan on making any more YouTube app videos? I was, I was loving that playlist. Well, the YouTube series was definitely very interesting. Building out that drag down feature where you drag the video was extremely difficult. But, maybe I'll make it simple to learn. I'm glad I got to see you live. Just got back from hackathon. I built a beautiful app with everything I've been learning from this channel. Keep up the good work. Good job. I started following you. I have a lot of things to learn from you. Thank you. Yes. What is server-side language? Well, learn Node.js or something. Node.js for push Firebase. If you make a tutorial about that, I think you hit 1 million views. Google stick on their back-end solution. Not the best. So yeah, I think you are correct. If I make that Node.js tutorial, I will be ranked up there, kind of like the current Firebase tutorial video. I don't know, but I mean, one for production, what do you recommend? For backend, use Node.js or Google Golang. So I use Google Golang. I don't know whether or not Google Golang is that easy to use. I think you kind of need to know what you're doing before you can learn Google Golang efficiently. Big fan. You seem like a very likable person. I hope you make millions as a developer. Yeah, we'll see how close to a million I can get. What do you think about Android Studio performance? I think it's absolutely terrific. I think Android Studio is super, super fast. Like, when you are, I don't know what else I want to say about that. So the thing I don't like, I never really like pointing out the negative aspects of like iOS or the negative things about Android, because both platforms have their, their negative sides to it. And there are so many more positives that it's hard to say, like, okay, this thing is not good because of a certain reason. Build a complete app system. You need to learn about server, Linux, MySQL, Nginx, PHP client, Swift, Objective-C, HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript. This is basic configuration. Yeah. If you want to build out, if you want to be a very, very good engineer, try to become a full stack engineer. So you have the entire stack, right? So starting from the database stack, you have the server side, and then you have perhaps the HTML, and then you have the mobile, which is iOS and Android. If you not do all of those 5 things, you can become a really, really good engineer, and you can command a perhaps $150,000 salary in the San Francisco Bay Area, and also pretty much anywhere around the world. Okay, Thomas Yoon. I work at a company as iOS software engineer, and if I start making videos like your channel, do you think I would face legal actions if I make money off of YouTube? Well, no. It depends on if you're releasing software. Like, you definitely don't want to release code from that company, which is private, and it's what you would call like closed source. So you can make videos about anything. You're not going to get, like, so right now I'm not working for any company, so I have freedom to make whatever I want. You have to be very careful about the content that you produce, and make sure not to release secure information that you cannot disclose about the company. So for example, right, even right now, I will not talk about the amount of money that my previous company, Touch of Modern, how much money they make based on, just on the iOS app. I know roughly what the numbers are. So it's like in the millions. So I pretty much know what the number is, but I can't say anything beyond that. and like millions. I say that because there's been published articles about how much the company makes per year. We did a tutorial on how to deal with keychain and store sensitive data like password, maybe eventually in the future. That's maybe why people don't use assembly much. Yes, assembly. Oof. How many of you guys have learned assembly before and find it hard? I know I did. No, that is none of their business as long as you don't make a clone of their app and teach it on YouTube. Exactly. What do you think about server-side frameworks such as Vapor, Katura? Well, I think it's fairly early to say whether or not those languages are going to be maintained and supported in the future. And, I can't really recommend these languages because they're so new that, documentation is not as mature. You might not be able to do certain things in these languages, so I just don't know. So like, if you have a company building out Google Golang, so Google supports this language, so, why not go with it? That's kind of my idea, but, nonetheless, if I had time to learn Vapor and Katura, I definitely will do so. What are your thoughts on the future of iOS development and mobile development in general? What do you think we will see more or less of? So I think eventually mobile development will it's definitely stagnating in terms of what we can do on mobile phones these days. So for example, the 3D touch feature on iOS, when it came out, everyone was kind of like, oh yeah, this is a really, really nice thing to play with, and I can't wait to see the the games that we can use or play around with 3D touch, right? And I haven't seen any of that at all. Like 3D touch is super gimmicky. I can't really see anything new that we can do in mobile development. So I feel like eventually mobile development it's not going to go away completely, but you'll see a lot of people starting to lose interest in it over time. Where's the best place to learn Android development? I want to have my main focus on iOS, but as you said, it's smart to know how to develop in Android OS. How do I ban this person from the channel? Can I ban him? Remove, block. Okay, do we want to remove or block this person here? We'll just put user in timeout. Okay. Do you have any ideas or not having to log in every time is what I meant, persist login. So if you watch that Audible walkthrough series, we kind of save the login information inside of user defaults. In a production app, which minimum iOS version you should support? Probably 9.1. Good job learning many things from you. Don't stop. Yep. Hello from Moroccan living in Russia. Hello, Yasin. I agree they will probably have a very significant role in the future of mobile development. LLVM, yeah. Currently learning assembly and it's a pain, yes. I want to make an app for cross-platform. Do you have a language for me? I don't know. React Native, I guess. Thanks a lot for your tutorials. You are a legend. Thank you for the compliments. Assembly, it's just for fun and a challenge. Yes, it is a brain fuck, for example. Yeah, assembly is... It's not that assembly is difficult. It's just that regular standard programming is much, much easier. That's my opinion. Would love to get your opinion on the startup scene for mobile developers. Well, yeah, I don't know. For cross-platform app, React Native is a pretty good option. Could you do a video to give us some tips, examples on how to create UI collection view programmatically in Objective-C instead? Well, I don't know. Doesn't seem like so Objective-C and Swift, it's like 90% the same, I would say. I don't find, like, so when Swift came out and Objective-C was the main thing, for me to switch from Objective-C to Swift, I don't know, it took me like 2 days probably. And I just used the auto-completion to figure out, okay, here's what the thing is called, here's what I need, okay, and then Google search how optionals work, and that's kind of what we did. But then again, I've been programming for quite some time, so it wasn't all that hard. Is it safe to store login details in user defaults? There are better options, but I don't know. If you're asking this question, then you probably don't care enough to keep it safe or not. No JS tutorials. Well, I guess let me clarify. So if you're asking whether or not it's safe to store login details in user defaults, like, this question is kind of paradoxical, because if you know about security and if you care about security, you probably know already that user defaults is not a safe place to store things. But at the same time, if you are wondering this, then you probably don't need to have your user information secure. Yeah, it's kind of a paradox. I have a question for you. What's different between Objective-C and Swift, and why use it? Well, there is not much of a difference. Do you think about private tutoring online? Would you consider this kind of format for teaching iOS programming? So I do, I don't really know if I want to say this, but so I do offer one-on-one mentoring, but not all the time, because sometimes one-on-one mentoring is I don't know, so sometimes 1 hour I feel like is not enough for mentoring. So I guess what I want to say is I feel like sometimes students need a couple of hours of mentoring, and 1 hour is not enough. So I feel like that money spent on that 1 hour is not the best use of that 1 hour worth of time. But if you have like burning questions, then you can still book me for 1 hour. Depends on what you feel like. You can ignore this question, but he's asked, what is your main source of revenue? So main source of revenue is just contract work, and then building out the website and building out courses so that people can buy the courses. Where can I start with Firebase? The docs by Firebase are pretty complicated in my opinion. So I don't think the Firebase documentation is complicated at all. It just kind of depends on where you are as a programmer. All right, so what else do we want to get through here? Looks like that's the last of the questions. Okay. So, Android again. Yeah, so thank you everyone for coming to join the channel today. I feel like Android versus iOS it's kind of a common question that you get from everyone that's trying to learn how to get into mobile development. And what do I want to say here? I think Android might be a little easier in certain regards, and then you have iOS, which is, a lot easier typically. So the thing about Android and iOS is that depending on the documentation that you can find, you might find one thing easier than another. And right now, documentation is so widely available for both platforms that it's super easy to learn how to do everything that you want. And then, okay, so let's talk about debugging your application for just a quick minute. The thing that's frustrating about Xcode is when you experience a crash, sometimes it's very hard to decipher what's causing your application to crash. And then you will find that when you're in Android, the stack trace that you get tells you exactly what line, what class, which function that your code is crashing in. So wouldn't that be nice if Xcode told you exactly what you needed to know about the crash? So that's one major pain that I wish Xcode would solve. And even now with the introduction of Swift, when you try to debug what your variables are at any given moment in time, you try to toggle what the little editor is trying to tell you. Sometimes you can't figure out exactly what these variables are during runtime. And then you have to use a print statement where, if you don't need a print statement, then you probably don't want to type it out. So in Android Studio, you can just toggle exactly what your variables are. It's like super easy and makes it very, very straightforward. So that's what I have to say about that. And the thing about these applications on both platforms is that as long as you know how to integrate JSON and build out a list, you're going to be able to build out like 90% of applications. And that's why when I released that LBTA components pod, that framework, everything in there is like meant to make your life easier. Building out a list takes like I don't know, 5 lines of code. Integrating JSON with Tron takes, I don't know, a couple of other lines. And then the other thing that I haven't shown that's available in that package is that you can use this image view that loads images directly from a URL, which is also super easy. So having done this for a couple of years, you see the same reoccurring pattern for every project. You build out a list, you get some kind of JSON thing, you load some images, put some text on the screen, and you have an app. And that's what I say when I was mentioning about mobile development getting a little stagnant. Okay, why is there so few Swift tutorials developing for Android? You get everything as a tutorial. Not really sure what that means. Okay, here's something else. Is it sometimes confusing to switch between a lot of languages, or does autocomplete save you? Autocomplete does save me a lot, and I think common sense saves me even more. Yeah. So having done this for a while, you kind of feel like, oh, this thing should be available, right? Intuition kicks in, and you say, oh, I should be able to do this, and then you give it a try, and oh, magically this thing appears, and it does exactly what you think it should do. So there it is. Do you have any paid tutorials such as Udemy? I love to purchase one of your tutorials to help, since you have helped me a lot in iOS programming development. If you look in the description down below for this video, you see on that website, letsbuildthatApp.com/basic training, you can purchase a course to support the channel if you want to do so. So that's that. Who's this Sabda guy? I guess we'll just block you. Yeah. Is Objective-C still relevant for iOS programming? Yes, it is. Okay. So I think we are going to wrap it up here. It's always very, very interesting to see everyone that joins the live chat. And I think we hit a high of about 130 people in the channel today. And, a lot of interesting questions that you guys have. Remember, every Sunday at 10 a.m. or roughly 10:30 Eastern, we hold a chat kind of similar to this, where you guys can present your questions, and then I'll talk about something that I find relevant to mobile development. Most of the time, it should be about Swift, but you never know whenever we want to toss in either Android, HTML, server side, and perhaps career related advice that I have to give to you guys. And yeah, so that's what the live stream is about. And hopefully next week we will see something more interesting. Or not that today wasn't interesting, but we get a lot of good stuff from everyone out there. And remember, everyone out there, you want to get better at programming. You just code every day. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.